Do note that the incorrect examples are exaggerated on purpose so that the issues are easier to see. In my opinion, the correct examples do properly show what they are meant to show. However, they are in no way perfect. As an exercise, see if you can spot issues with my form in the correct examples, and if you do, leave a comment down below. In this episode, we'll take a look at the short edge version of a descending cut. Few words about the basic short edge cuts before we get into the exercises. This goes for both the ascending and the descending cuts. In the manuscripts I've read, these are not actually used to cut at the opponent. These are used as parries or to get into a bind. If my memory serves, the few examples I've heard of where the target is actually our opponent, we are aiming at the face or the hands. From this, I presume that the intention is not to cut deep. However, this is second-hand information. I can't remember to personally have read a manuscript where the target is our opponent. I think that there is a single reason for this. These cuts can be dangerous to the cutter themselves. When we cut with the short edge in a handshake grip, we are cutting in the direction of the bend of our arm. This means that if the sword stops, the movement of our arm will force extension of the elbow and excessive ulnar deviation of the wrist. As explained earlier in the series, neither of these is really a good thing and can cause an injury. Because of this, do not try to do this cut on a target before you are sure that you can stabilize your wrist and elbow. Neither of them can be at the end of their range of motion to begin with. When you start to cut at any resistive material, and that includes tatami, start slow. I recommend that you start testing the cut on a pel or with a training partner. Start slowly and only add more power after you are sure that you can keep your wrists and elbows locked. Only cut tatami or any other cutting media after you are sure that you can keep your elbows and wrists safe if you fail. I have seen too many times people trying these cuts on tatami, especially with a single-handed sword, and hurting their wrist and or elbow. When you are cutting a cutting medium, do not try to force the cut through. Your form must be good enough that you don't need to. I also believe that this is the reason that these cuts are described as parries in the manuscripts. It is very unlikely that your opponent's sword would completely stop your cut. This then tends to keep your joints relatively safe in case your structure fails. With that out of the way, let's get to the exercises. And remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Unlike with the long edge descending cut, I recommend that you start at an angle you are comfortable with. Instead of having to concentrate on a more difficult angle to cut at, you can concentrate on keeping your wrists and elbows safe. I would recommend that this angle is closer to vertical than horizontal. As explained earlier, it is more difficult to cut tatami with a cut that is closer to horizontal. After you can do the cut at the angle you are good at, then move to the 45-degree angle. After you can do that, then learn to cut at any other angle. Now, let's see how to get to the proper starting position for this cut. Just like with the ascending cuts, the easiest way to get to a starting position for this short edge cut is to cut a normal long edge ascending cut and stop at the end position. This is now your starting position for the opposite side short edge descending cut. This works for both dominant and non-dominant side cuts. With this cut, it is very important that you do not cut towards your front leg. This is probably the one cut that is most likely to get you to cut yourself. As you have the point pointing backwards at the end position of the cut, it is much easier to cut yourself than with other cuts. As such, do not cut towards your front leg. I personally find this cut easier when done from the dominant side. Having my arms crossed allows my wrists to stabilize each other. Because of this, I'm also showing the examples from that side. You can naturally start from the non-dominant side if you find it easier. At this point in the series, it should be trivial for you to adapt the exercises for the non-dominant side. Now to the exercise itself. Stand in the starting position. Grip properly and brace. Generate power by rotating around your spine and bring your arms down. Stop the cut at the start position of an ascending cut from the dominant side. In theory, there is nothing difficult with this cut. The difficulty comes from the fact that it is very difficult to compensate for bad form. As already said, if you try to force the cut, it is possible that you injure yourself. As such, there is very little room for error when cutting media. Let's take a look at the most common issues with this cut. A common issue is having a loose grip or not properly stabilizing your wrist. This is because in the starting position, gravity is pulling the sword down. This makes it feel like you have a proper grip as you are leading with the tip. The second thing is that you might actually be trying to lift the point up and straighten your wrist. This can be really bad if you try to bring the point up and straighten your wrist on contact, as it will increase the risk of wrist injury. You must grip properly and have a proper handshake grip. Concentrate on locking your wrists so that they can't rotate to any direction. With this cut, trajectory issues are rather common. People tend to scoop down, bringing the sword closer to their body at the end of the cut. This has the added issue that it makes it more likely that you actually hit your own leg. Naturally, this cut also has all the other issues a descending cut might have, but at this point of the series it should be trivial for you to figure them out yourself. If you need a recap on that, please go and watch the descending cuts episode. The link is in the description. After you can cut properly with one variation, move to the other ones. Cut with both feet forwards and cut from the dominant and non-dominant sides. Learn to cut at all angles and add the normal movement and stepping exercises to your arsenal. Remember, do not cut towards your front leg with this cut. As said earlier, it is important that you practice to cut against a resistive target, such as Pell or a training partner. Start slowly. Don't just go and cut at full power against a cutting media or an opponent before you have made sure that you can actually do it safely. Before we end this series, I have one more exercise for you. Let's see how to transition to a short edge descending cut from a guard on the dominant shoulder. Stand in the on the shoulder guard on the dominant side. Have your dominant foot forwards. Extend your arms to center while simultaneously crossing your arms. Stop. Make sure your grip is good and wrists and elbows are locked. Cut a descending cut with the short edge. A common mistake is to bring the point in from the side when crossing your arms. This causes there to be a lot of movement in the direction of the flats. This makes it more difficult to have a proper trajectory. You should bring the point along the cutting trajectory when crossing your arms. This makes it easier to maintain proper trajectory. As usual, after you can do this with a stop, start blending in the actions. As always, you should end up with a one smooth action. A common mistake when trying to make this into a single action is to actually not cut through. Instead of bringing their arms down to cut, people tend to only do a snapping cut by rotating the sword while keeping their hands at roughly chest level. This can definitely work as a parry, and it can definitely cut through tatami, But as we are still trying to bring proper cutting mechanics to every action we make, you should practice this as a full cut. This transition is a very demanding one to do correctly, as the cut itself is already hard. Without the transition just makes it so much more difficult. Before we get to the recap, a very big thank you for everyone who has had the time and interest to follow the series all the way here. My aim was to document my current knowledge of cutting theory to a single source for everyone to see. How well I've managed to do that, only the future will tell. I sincerely hope that this series has helped you on your journey to become a more proficient cutter and fencer. It is easy to hurt your wrists and elbows with this cut. Make sure that they are properly locked and not at the end of their range of motion. Do not cut towards your front leg. Before cutting at a hard target, such as tatami or an opponent, make sure that you practice with an resistive target with low-powered cuts. Learn to cut from the dominant and the non-dominant sides. Also remember to practice moving and stepping with the cut. And finally, don't forget transitions.